Gave my mom and her husband a book about infidelity on their anniversary, and now the fallout's tearing our fragile relationship apart. I'm a 16-year-old guy, and I really do love my mom, even after everything that's happened. But 6 years ago, when I was 10, she had an affair and left my dad and me. It turned our world upside down. I tried visiting her as much as I could, and every time I showed up, she lit up with this happiness. But the truth was, I absolutely hated her new family, her new husband, their daughters. They always felt like strangers invading what used to be my life. Being around them just hurt too much. So eventually, I just stopped visiting her as often. We rarely saw each other after that, just for birthdays or big events, never really connecting like before. She always wanted us to be close again, kept trying to reach out, but I just couldn't do it. I wanted nothing to do with her new husband. So, I kept my distance. Then came February 20th. My dad had to go out of town for business until the 12th, and my grandparents were off in Italy, visiting relatives and stuck there. I had nowhere else to go. My mom jumped at the opportunity to have me stay over with her. She was so eager, so hopeful. I wasn't thrilled, but I didn't have a choice. And, of course, it just happened to be her anniversary with her husband that weekend. Perfect timing, right? From the second I stepped into that house, it was clear I didn't fit in. All I wanted to do was hide out in my room, drowning in homework, or escape the house completely by meeting up with friends. Anything to avoid those family activities, because seeing her so touchy-feely and perfect with her husband and their daughters just made something in me ache. The morning before her anniversary, she came into my room and tried to snuggle up to me, like she used to before she left us. Like she thought we could just turn back the clock. But all it did was make me angry. We can't pretend things are the same. I just froze, pretending to be asleep the whole time, curled up and unmoving until she left. And once she was gone, I broke down. I cried, and all this bitterness bubbled up inside me, and I felt so resentful. My mom majored in literature, so when it came time to get her an anniversary gift, the idea just hit me. I picked up a copy of Anna Karenina. If you know the story, you get the sting. It's about a woman who leaves her husband and son for her lover. I never read the book, but I watched the movie with my girlfriend and honestly hated it. It felt like a pointed message, but I couldn't help myself. Sunday rolled around, and their anniversary party got underway. Everyone seemed to be having a great time, except me. Gifts were passed around, and when it was my turn, I handed over my present. My mom opened it and just stared, stunned. All she could manage was a quiet, "Thanks." The party fizzled out not long after. That night, I heard her crying, really loud crying from her bedroom. I couldn't help it, I listened in. She kept saying things about the book and about me, while her husband was trying to comfort her, shushing her, trying to calm her down. The next morning at breakfast, she'd already left for work before I got up. Her husband didn't hold back, he cornered me and flat out called me an asshole, among other things, just for giving them that book. Now, days have passed and my mom barely talks to me. And I can't shake this gnawing feeling. I know I hurt her, made her cry. Part of me feels so terrible for that. But another part of me doesn't want to be in that house, she knows I don't. So I keep asking myself, was I really that awful? Or am I just lost, trying to make sense of how I fit into her new life? Update 1. The day after everything happened, I let my girlfriend read what I'd written. She looked at me and just said, "Stay with me, dummy." That made me smile, but I still had to figure out where I'd really be staying. I told my dad everything, and he said I could stay at his place. He even sent my girlfriend's mom an email. He didn't want to leave anything unsaid with the people who care about me. At my mom's place, I sat her down and told her the truth. She got really sad, her face just fell, but she said it was okay, she'd drive me wherever I needed and emailed my dad too. But deep down, I knew there was still this quiet pain between us, so I wanted to talk with her alone like some people suggested. The school counselor helped me write a letter to read to her, just in case I couldn't say the words myself. As she drove me, I tried to speak. The words wouldn't come, so I just stared out the window, gripping that letter in my hands. Suddenly, she pulled into a random parking lot and turned off the engine. The car was silent. She started talking first, her voice breaking a little. She talked about the book, about how she still sees me as her baby, about how she's not actually happy, and about us, everything I wished she'd said a long time ago. At the end, she told me it was okay if I hated her for what she did, because she knows she hurt me. She promised she'd never push to be my mom again, but if I ever wanted her, she'd always be there for me. I didn't hate her, I loved her, and I just started crying, the kind where your whole body shakes. I've never had a breakdown like that before, but I couldn't stop. She gently helped me out of the front seat and into the back, cradled me in her arms, let me sob it out. I tried to tell her I loved her, but the words were buried in the crying. Eventually, she calmed me down, and I finally managed to say what I'd been feeling. I told her I want her to be my mom, but I can't stand her husband. I said I didn't want anything bad to happen to her, that I didn't want a train to hit her like I'd thought when I was angry. I even told her about the time she tried to cuddle me and how I feel bad now, knowing it's never going to happen again, because I'm never going back to her house. She told me she knew I was awake that night and mad at her. That made me cry all over again, but she just held me and told me it was okay. She admitted she was wrong, and we talked for what felt like hours. My head started to hurt from all the crying, so she got me some Advil from the glove box. When I told her all the mean things her husband had said to me, she went quiet, then got really, really angry, like I'd never seen before. She told me she'd never let him come between us again. She promised to take me to therapy, just us, no matter what Dad said, and that she'd spend time with me, just the two of us. After that, she dropped me off, and for the first time in a while, I actually felt lighter, like something had been lifted. I stayed there until my dad came back, and he promised never to send me to her house again. If my grandparents stay in Italy, he said I could stay with my girlfriend. He agreed that I could do family therapy with my mom, he just wants to make sure it's the right kind. We haven't started therapy yet, but my mom has kept her promise. She keeps reaching out, making time for me, and, honestly, it feels good. It's like, just being wanted is enough to start feeling happier again. Update 2. I've been going to therapy with my mom every Friday, and on Saturdays and Sundays, we hang out, just the two of us. That first weekend together, she took me to see Batman, and the day after, we went to Boston Pizza. Since then, we've mostly gone on walks and hikes, or even just shopping, but honestly, I like that, it gives us so much time to talk. We also FaceTime every single day. It honestly feels like I finally have my mom back, and that's all I ever really wanted. What's wild is that the way we hug now, it actually feels real, like we're both really there, holding each other, not just going through the motions. Before, hugging felt more like a routine, something I did because I was supposed to. Now, though, it's special in a way I didn't expect. I don't know, I just feel so much happier than before. Even my girlfriend noticed and said I seem happier lately. Therapy has been a lot stranger than I thought it would be. Before our first session, my dad spent about half an hour grilling the psychologist, interrogating her before letting my mom and me go in. That first appointment was focused on a book and why it made my mom cry, and everything kind of spiraled from there. In the later sessions, I find myself crying a lot. My mom always brings me a bottle of Gatorade, almost like she expects it now. She ends up crying too, but she always tries to hide it. The therapist asked her about that, and she said she hides it because she doesn't want her crying to influence what I'm saying or how I'm feeling. I'm still not comfortable with going alone, even though both the therapist and my mom have suggested it. My mom said she'll keep bringing me and is also planning to start going on her own, but I'm just not ready for that yet. One thing I did tell her in therapy is that I worry she's doing all this just because she wants to bring me into her new family, and that if it doesn't work out, she'd just choose her husband again and leave me for good. That hit her really hard. She cried a lot and couldn't hold any of it in. She told me she's finally starting to understand that I really don't trust her anymore, and that maybe I never will, and that she knows it's all her fault. Still, she promised me that I'd never have to see her husband if I didn't want to. She'd only bring my sisters when I felt ready, and nothing would keep her from being at my graduations, my wedding, any important event in my life. When she finally calmed down, she did kind of joke that the only time I'd have to deal with him would be at her funeral, but I really don't want to think about that at all. There's a lot more that happens in therapy, but I think I just needed to say that part. Easter was the best holiday I've had in a long time, even though I didn't go anywhere. My mom's husband took their kids to visit his parents, so my mom stayed behind. We had the whole weekend together. There were moments where I actually felt like a little kid again. I even got to properly introduce her to my girlfriend, and to my girlfriend's mom, and we all had Easter dinner together. My mom made turkey, and I didn't realize how much I'd missed her cooking. It tasted exactly like it did when I was younger. I finally told her that my grandparents aren't coming back from Italy, and that's why I'd been feeling especially down. I also admitted that my dad and his fiancée are planning to move to Catania after I graduate, and they'll be staying there. I'll probably go to university in Catania and Palermo, too. My mom was sad. She said she didn't want me to go, but she admitted she would support me no matter what I chose. That's become a big topic in our recent therapy sessions, the possibility of me moving far away soon. On Mother's Day, her husband took his kids to see their grandparents again, and my mom and I already had plans to go to a restaurant called Cactus Club together. I didn't know if my stepsisters would be spending the day with her, so I suggested she bring them so they wouldn't feel left out. I don't really know the girls that well, but it still felt good. My mom brought her camera, she hates phone cameras, and asked the waitress to take a photo of all of us at the end. I had a copy taken on my phone too, so I could send the pictures to her. That's where things stand right now. A lot has changed, and a lot is still uncertain, but I genuinely feel like I have my mom back, and every day, that means more to me than I can explain. Update 3. My exams are finally over, and now it's summer break. The best part? I got into AP English. My teacher already handed out 2 lists of books for us to read over the summer so we can be prepared. On one list, there are classics like Wuthering Heights, The Great Gatsby, Moby Dick, and Frankenstein, and he made it clear that we absolutely need to work through those because we'll have to choose 2 for essays and assignments. Then there's this massive second list, just packed with books he recommends to get us even more prepared. I spotted Anna Karenina on there. My girlfriend noticed too, and she joked about how it's a good thing I already bought that one. Since my mom knows all these books inside and out, I handed her both lists before our therapy session. She said she'd take me to Indigo or some second-hand bookstores to look for the best versions, especially because a few of them are translations. Having her help meant a lot to me, especially because I don't feel comfortable attending therapy sessions on my own, yet. I just can't imagine speaking up if she's not there beside me. She's encouraging me to try a session alone, but I'm not ready. She's even done a few alone over Teams, but if I end up crying without her in the room, I know I won't want the therapist to comfort me, and if I do therapy at home, I really don't want my dad or his fiancée noticing me upset and asking what's wrong. Dad still doesn't like that I go to therapy. Anyway, he actually blew up at his fiancée because when her niece and nephew move in, she plans to send them to therapy too. He's against the idea, they can't speak English well, and he's terrified it'll end up like it did for him, being forced into sessions as a kid and not being able to communicate. That argument got heated and I got pulled into it, so much so that my mom was called and she threatened to take legal action about custody to make it clear I was still going to therapy no matter what. Dad apologized to me afterward and said he'll try to be more supportive and work through his fear about it. After that, my mom went out and bought me copies of The Great Gatsby, Moby Dick, and Frankenstein, saying that Wuthering Heights would probably bore me. For the bigger reading list, she also found The Count of Monte Cristo, A Tale of Two Cities, Great Expectations, and Catch-22. She gave me back the copy of Anna Karenina that I'd given her, explaining that she thought it might help me understand why getting that book hurt her so much, but she promised that if reading it becomes too much, I can give it right back to her. I think I'll try it. I saw the movie. How bad can it be? On top of everything, my mom said she wants to take me on a trip in August. She pointed out that if I really do end up moving to Italy next summer with everyone, this might be our only chance for a real vacation together. I'm not sure if I want to go, honestly, but if it matters that much to her, maybe I should. Part of me is just scared her husband might show up, even though she promised he won't. I guess that's where things stand for now. Update 4. Didn't think I'd be writing so soon, but sometimes I just need to put things down, and today is one of those days. I've officially started tackling the dreaded summer reading list. I picked up Frankenstein first because I was honestly the most excited for it, and wow, it absolutely lived up to my expectations. I felt a surprising amount of sympathy for Frankenstein himself, even though his actions had such devastating fallout. His selfishness set off a chain where his brother, his brother's nanny, and his wife all ended up dead, and none of them deserved it. Calling him a modern Prometheus really fits. He's striving for something beyond himself but can't quite be a hero, especially living in a world so much less mythic than Prometheus's. I watched the Robert De Niro film adaptation with my girlfriend, which was good in its own right, but nothing compares to the book. After that, The Great Gatsby came next. I liked it, but it just didn't hit me the way Frankenstein did. Now I'm wading my way through Moby Dick. As for Anna Karenina, I managed to get through the first part, and to be honest, I already like the book more than the movie adaptation. What really threw me off is that Anna isn't even the main character at first, it's this guy named Levin, and he's definitely fascinating. He's a farmer with a sharp mind, always lost in thought, and that makes him feel vividly real, even when his dialogue and inner monologues come across as stylized in ways no one would actually talk or think in real life. What truly shocked me about Anna Karenina was how modern it seemed at times. Sure, there are little touches that remind you it's the past, like telegrams or the ritual of receiving guests, or the way they describe lighting a fireplace. But then suddenly they talk about everyday things that make it feel eerily current. Working in an office, Levin toiling away on the farm, skating at a public rink, grabbing coffee in the morning, or just going to a diner and placing an order like it's any time, any city. Obviously, all the main characters are dripping with privilege. Some are connected to the emperor himself, but it makes me think 1800s Russian aristocracy is oddly similar to modern upper-class life, just with a lot fewer rights for women. But when it comes to Anna's parts, I find I just don't like them, and I really can't stand Vronsky, the guy Anna leaves her family for in the movie. Every time I picture him, I immediately see that annoying actor from the film, and it drives me insane. He's always so bland in every role and just inexplicably everywhere. Vronsky as a character is awful, hanging out at brothels, stringing along Kitty, the girl Levin loves, just so he can sleep with her, faking affection for his mother who's honestly a disaster, and then the second he meets Anna and hears about how much she adores her son, he decides he has to have her. The lack of depth in his character is infuriating. He's written as if he isn't even supposed to be a real person. The scene where Anna and Vronsky dance is bizarre. It's shown entirely from Kitty's perspective, capturing her humiliation while simultaneously letting us watch Anna and Vronsky fall for each other. But after that, the chapters flip to Anna's perspective, and suddenly there's no real explanation for why they acted the way they did, just an assumption that Anna is drawn to him but feels ashamed, and Vronsky is in love. And the worst part? Anna tells him no twice after the ball and Vronsky just bulldozes through, refusing to back down. At school, we get lectures all the time about how girls don't want guys who don't respect their boundaries, but the way Tolstoy writes it, Anna is almost supposed to fall for him because of it. It kills me. And then everything changes for Anna. Meeting Vronsky seems to alter her view of her son, even though deep down, her son is the most precious thing she has. And Anna's husband, he isn't some cartoon villain. He's just sarcastic, not unfaithful, trusts Anna. As far as I can tell, the author insists they love each other. I got into a real argument with my mom about Levin being the main character. She insisted that if I say that, I have to acknowledge that Kitty is just as important, and that eventually, I'll come to see why the story needed her perspective and how Anna's choices affect her. Mom said if Tolstoy wrote The Ball from Kitty's Eyes, it was because Anna would have been too complex to write at that stage, and he wanted readers to invent the reasons for their feelings themselves. We ended up dragging that argument into therapy because it got so heated. She just wouldn't accept that I don't think Tolstoy is that great a writer, at least so far. My therapist said I was projecting people from my real life onto book characters, and that only led us down the usual path, talking about my dad and how resistant he is to my therapy. Meanwhile, life at home got a lot more complicated. My dad's fiancée's niece and nephew moved in a few days before Canada Day, and it's definitely been odd getting used to having them around. They love the Canada Day parade, but they're generally pretty quiet and get upset easily. Sometimes Julia, my dad's fiancée, has to sleep with them both just to calm them down. I'm really trying to be friendly, letting them play on my PlayStation, playing poker or basketball together, but honestly, I think they prefer my girlfriend. I suspect they think she's famous or something. It doesn't help that they don't really know English yet, even though they've been seeing a tutor, and our conversations in Italian are a mess because their accent throws me off half the time, and when they slip into Sicilian, I am completely lost. I brought them up in therapy once and could tell right away that my mom felt sad about it. I guess it's because I hardly know her partner's kids, so I haven't really mentioned them since then. Therapy itself has gotten even weirder. My dad made Julia promise that the kids wouldn't go to therapy alone, and he honestly seemed shaken by the whole thing. He gets anxious every time they go. There have been some heated arguments between him and Julia over it, and sometimes she even ropes in my grandparents for backup. Lately, he gives me these really tight hugs whenever I go to my sessions with my mom or come back, always asking how much longer I need to keep up the appointments, if I can stop soon. One time, I swear he was crying when I got home. He tried to hide it, but I saw. My mom told me to let her know right away if he ever tries to talk me out of going again. And now, the biggest issue on my mind, my mom is taking 2 weeks off work at the start of August and really wants to go away together, just us, one last vacation before she gets busy preparing for the new school year. She talked a lot about us going to Kelowna or Kamloops, kept saying over and over that her husband wouldn't tag along, and I got the sense she really needed this. But at the same time, Julia is heading back to Italy the first week of August to deal with her sister's will, and she asked me to come with her. She promised to show me around the University of Palermo and the University of Catania and even introduce the idea of meeting with advisors there. Plus, I'd finally get to see my grandparents again. When I mentioned this to my mom, she looked heartbroken. She said she'd really hoped I'd stay so we could have one last trip. She kept repeating it in different ways all weekend. I genuinely don't want to let her down, but I also really want to see my grandparents. Sometimes it feels like I'm living 2 separate lives. I know I rambled on way longer than I meant to, but if anyone has advice on what I should do, go with my mom or go with Julia. I could seriously use another perspective. I want to start by saying, if you're out there, I hope you know the conversations we had truly helped me. Now, I need to come clean about a few things I lied about in my older posts, probably because I wanted to sound cooler than I actually was. For instance, I once claimed I couldn't understand my stepmom's niece and nephew when they spoke Italian, but that wasn't true at all. The only trouble I had was when they spoke Sicilian, which is an entirely different beast. Looking back at those old posts, there's also this recurring theme where I kept insisting I never spoke to my mom's husband, that I gave him the cold shoulder all the time. That was another lie, something I made up because I wanted to seem tough or rebellious. Reading it again now honestly just makes me cringe. The real truth is that he was always friendly to me, and it was me who acted like a jerk because I resented him for taking my mom and forcing me to spend time around him when all I really wanted was her. The only time he was ever truly mean was when he called me an asshole for giving my mom that book. If I'm honest, I still harbor some bitterness toward him, but nowhere near as much as I used to. Maybe what I really hate is the part of him that symbolizes the pain of my parents' divorce. It's hard to explain. After moving to Italy with my dad, the ache of missing my mom got worse, and I kept blaming her husband in my head, convincing myself I would have spent more time with my mom in Canada if it weren't for him. Now, I try not to let that thinking corrupt me. I'm done being angry with my mom over something neither of us can change. I'll never love him or respect him the same way I do my stepmother. Still, regardless of my feelings, he loves my mom, he honestly makes her happy, and she loves him too. That is something I can't deny. I realize, too, that I wrote about crying badly a few times, but the truth is I cried way more than I ever confessed. I avoided writing about it because I was embarrassed and hated myself for being honest about those moments of weakness. Thinking back, most therapy sessions with my mom, or those hikes, or even the time I told her I wanted to move to Italy, so many moments something would set me off and I'd break down. Here, though, I twisted those memories and made it seem like I was calm and collected, hiding how raw it really was. There was another thing. I described not wanting to go on a vacation with my mom, claiming I wanted to check out Italian universities with my stepmom instead. The truth? I desperately wanted to go with my mom. In fact, I did, and it turned out to be one of the best trips of my life. Why I pretended otherwise, I can't even remember. Life has gotten a lot better since. I have a plan for my future. I'm not angry and bitter all the time or depressed. My dad and my stepmom are officially married now, and I've never seen him this happy. I absolutely love university. It's so much better than regular school, and at times, it really feels like the best thing ever. My Sicilian is still terrible, but everyone speaks Italian, so it doesn't even matter. The reason all these thoughts started swirling again is because my mom and her husband had another baby in August. I flew in a day after she got home from the hospital and stayed until I absolutely had to go. On my last night back in Canada, my girlfriend came over to visit my mom. Yeah, the same girlfriend I've had since way back when. Even with an ocean between us, we've somehow made it work. She took a photo with my new baby sister and sent it to me. When I woke up and saw it, it just brought everything back, and I felt like I needed to get these thoughts out. Looking back on the very first post, I realized I spent so much time blaming the lack of alone time with my mom on my sisters or her husband always being there. At that time, it seemed like I hadn't really seen her in forever, but that just wasn't true. I didn't bother to try and understand how difficult it was for my mom to be away from my sisters, especially when they were so little. And it took her a long time, maybe too long, to understand how much I needed time alone with her, but she kept trying until she finally got it. I appreciate that so much now. It's clear now, the person I was back then expected perfection from my mom, even if I wouldn't have been satisfied by it. I remember the guilt I felt for making her cry over that stupid book, and people pointed it out to me over and over. There's still a lingering guilt inside, but I've learned to forgive myself, just as I've learned to forgive her for not being perfect. If only I hadn't been so angry and sad, if only I hadn't worked so hard to resist enjoying time with her just because her husband and my sisters were around. I wish I had realized sooner that sharing happy times, even if he was present, didn't mean I'd forgiven or forgotten everything. And I wish I'd seen all the ways my mom tried to be a better mom after the divorce, tried to make up for breaking apart our family. I wish I'd known it was okay to be angry and act out because none of what happened was my fault. Maybe then, I could have realized what I truly wanted before so much time passed, because being upset didn't solve anything, it only hurt me, and my mom saw that, and it hurt her too. Now, my relationship with my mom is so much better. I love spending time with her, no strings attached, because I never want to carry regrets anymore. When I move back to Canada for my master's, I plan to stay with her. I want her back in my daily life. I want to eat her cooking, watch TV with her, just be a family again. And this time, it'll be different and better, because I truly want it. If I can give anyone advice, it's this: if you can make amends for your regrets, go ahead and do it. And, just to end on a lighter note, I still absolutely hated that book. If I could erase one thing, it wouldn't be giving it to my mom, it'd be scrubbing the memory of ever reading it. Honestly, Frankenstein is a better choice if you're looking for something to read. And don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Update 5. I didn't plan to write another thing for a while, but then Wednesday morning my phone buzzed with a message from my mom that just said, "Call me when you wake up. Please." I thought something was wrong with the baby, and my stomach went cold. When I called, she sounded like she'd been trying not to cry for hours and failing a little, and she asked if I'd be my sister's godfather. I couldn't say anything for a second. I was brushing my teeth with my phone on speaker and I just froze, foam in my mouth, feeling stupid and 17 again. I always thought godparents were reserved for people who had their life figured out and didn't cry in grocery store parking lots, but she said there wasn't anyone else she wanted, and if I said no, she'd understand. She wouldn't take it back or make it about me not loving the baby. I spit, wiped my mouth, and said yes before I could talk myself out of it. The ceremony would be at the end of the month. It meant scrambling. I had to move an exam and ask a professor if I could take it 2 days early, and he squinted at me like he was trying to figure out if I was inventing a baby for an extension. When I showed him the email my mom sent with the baptism details, he smiled and told me to go and to tell the baby that Sicilian godfathers are required by law to bring cannoli. Flying in felt like dropping into the version of Vancouver that only exists in my memory, everything a little too clean, too bright, even the rain somehow softer. My mom picked me up at arrivals with the baby in the stroller and the car seat installed wrong, which I only know because she swore at it under her breath for 10 minutes while I tried to fix it. Seeing my sister's face again in real life instead of in photos hit me in a way nothing else has lately. She made a little grunt and kicked a sock off, and when I put it back on she looked almost offended. My stepsisters were at school, and her husband was at work, so it was just the three of us for most of the day. We went to a used bookstore because she needed a card and I wanted to see if they had a copy of Frankenstein for babies. They didn't, obviously, but there was a battered board book with a little green cartoon monster on the cover that said My First Monsters, and I bought it anyway, and she laughed and said if the priest asked what I'd chosen as a spiritual gift, I had to tell him it was an early education in the dangers of hubris. The church smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood, and the priest had the same voice as every priest I've ever met, warm and distant at the same time. My stepsisters wore matching dresses and tried to act like they were bored and above everything, and then the second the organ started, they gripped my hands so tight it hurt. The baby slept through the first hymn and woke up when the water touched her head and made this tiny outraged squeak that wrecked half the room. I held her while the priest talked about godparents being anchors and examples, and I felt completely unqualified and completely proud at once, like I'd been handed a job I could never be good enough to do and somehow wanted more than anything anyway. I kept looking over at my mom, and she was doing that thing where she tries not to cry and fails in the corners of her eyes, not the way she used to sob and apologize, just a quiet overflowing that made me want to hold her hand. Afterward there was a reception in the church basement with terrible coffee, and those triangle sandwiches with the crusts cut off, and for some reason a mountain of samosas someone brought that everyone fought over, and a tray of Nanaimo bars that tasted exactly like every school event I've ever been to. My mom's husband came up to me while I was trying not to drop the baby and a plate of food at the same time. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "I need to say something to you before the day runs away with me," and he apologized for calling me an asshole that morning years ago. He said he's replayed it in his head more times than he's told my mom, that he'd been angry at me for weaponizing a book, but really he'd been terrified because it was the first time he understood there was a version of the future where I wasn't in it with them, where the family they built would always be something I wanted to get away from. He said he didn't know how to carry his own guilt and hers too, so he picked the ugliest thing and threw it at me. It didn't feel like he was asking me to absolve him. It felt like he was finally putting down a weight he should have put down a long time ago. I told him I had spent years looking at him like a person-shaped neon sign that said everything you lost, and if it had been me on the other side, I would have hated me too. Then the baby hiccuped so hard she looked offended again, and we both started laughing, and that was somehow the end of that conversation and the start of something else. He asked if I'd like to come by one afternoon while I was in town, just us and the kids, my mom at work, no agenda, and I surprised myself by wanting to say yes. I'm not going to bleach the next part to make myself look cooler. When my mom made her little thank you speech, because she can't not make a speech, she turned to me and said she'd never expected to get this back, not like this, not with me choosing it in front of everyone. I cried. It was ugly crying, ridiculous crying, and she cried too, and in a church basement full of folding chairs and fluorescent lights we had this quiet, private moment where she mouthed thank you at me like she was saying I love you for the first time. I carried my sister around after that until my arms hurt. At some point she fell asleep on my chest and I found a windowsill and sat down and let her sweat through my shirt and it didn't bother me at all. One of my stepsisters leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Are you going to come back for school?" And I didn't know how to answer, so I told her that I was trying to figure out a way to be here more. When we got back to my mom's house that night, she put the baby down and went to shower, and I took the time to sit at the kitchen table and try to catch up on a reading for one of my seminars. My phone buzzed. It was an email from my department with the subject line Mobilità Internazionale, placement offer, UBC. I thought I was imagining things. We'd talked about exchange applications as a someday kind of thing, something for my master's, something safer, but the coordinator had found a spot for me this winter at UBC, and all I had to do was confirm by the end of the week. I read it 3 times and then ran down the hall and knocked on the bathroom door like I was 5. My mom opened it with a towel around her hair, and I showed her my phone and she covered her mouth with her hand and then she grabbed my shoulders and shook me like she was trying to wake me up, the way she used to when I overslept for school. "If you want to," she kept saying, "if you want to, if you want to," like there was any version where I didn't want to. We stood in the hallway for a long time, both of us wet in different ways, the bathroom steaming behind her, the email glowing on my screen, and I realized that for the first time since I left, the idea of home wasn't only in one place. I said yes. I emailed back before midnight because I was afraid if I slept on it, the offer would slip out a window and run away. The next day I took the bus to campus to walk around and realized the buildings were real and not just postcard images in my head. We got sushi and sat by the water and watched the rain start and stop 3 times in 20 minutes, and my mom kept reaching over like she needed to touch my sleeve to prove I was solid. In the afternoon, when her husband took the girls to skating, I stayed back and changed diapers and did the complicated dance of warming bottles to a temperature that wouldn't get me yelled at by my brand new sister, and at one point she was fussy for no reason, so I sang the only lullaby I know, the Italian one my stepmom taught the twins, and it worked. It actually worked. My mom came out of the hallway and stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at us like we were a memory she hadn't let herself believe she'd get. I told her I was going to look for a place near campus, and she said she'd started looking for short-term rentals, and then she asked if I would consider staying with her, and I said yes before she finished. I told her I didn't want to waste any more time being near and acting far. On my last morning before flying back to Sicily, we stopped by the same used bookstore. The owner remembered my mom from when I was little. He said she used to hold my hand and ask for everything with footnotes. I found a better board book, a retelling of Frankenstein with a smiling creature and a scientist who looked like he'd had 8 hours of sleep and a snack, and I bought it for my sister as my proper godfather gift. I wrote inside, "For when you're ready to read the best book in the world. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise," and my mom rolled her eyes and said she'd let that blasphemy slide, only because I had to leave. At the airport, we hugged the way we do now, without counting or pretending it doesn't matter, and the baby burrowed into my chest the way she did at the church and drooled through another shirt. My mom kissed my head like she used to when I was 7, and her husband took our picture and then put his phone away without making a joke. On the plane, I finally opened my laptop to finish that seminar response I'd been putting off, the one about how we imprint on the narratives we need and then blame the authors for not being kinder to us. I thought about how much I used to need Tolstoy to be on my side, to punish people the way I thought they should be punished, to make choices cleaner than they ever are in real life. I thought about the priest's homily. I wrote that forgiveness isn't a door you open once but a hallway you walk down, passing the same rooms over and over, sometimes going back, sometimes knocking for the first time. It felt corny as hell typing it, but when I landed and turned my phone on, my mom had sent me a picture of the baby with the monster book, her fist on the cover like she was claiming it, and I didn't care how corny it sounded anymore. I'm coming back in January for the exchange. I'm going to sleep in the room at my mom's that still has the little paint flecks from when I was 10 and we tried to make it look like a galaxy. I'm going to be a godfather who actually shows up. And even if it rains every day, even if I hate my classes, even if my Sicilian starts leaking out of both ears because I'm swapping it for English and my girlfriend has to correct me over video calls because I stopped using the subjunctive again, I get to be here. That feels insane and perfect and exactly the right kind of terrifying.